Hello, my name is Joe, and this is the fourth installment of anxiety and mental health problem vlog. Um, the last episode we discussed certain uh, actions that can be taken to help relieve anxiety or bring you towards feelings of balance. And yeah, we spoke about how doing gentle exercise, getting a good structured bedtime and wake up routine, and taking up um, certain new small achievable skills to try out when you're feeling anxious, how they can really sort of focus your mind and draw you away from overthinking and worrying or anxious thoughts or feelings. Um, this episode, I'm going to talk about books. I'm going to talk about books that have been uh, informative and have nurtured the better aspects of my um, my pursuits of dealing with anxiety and have helped, but also made me really sort of come to grips and challenge the difficult aspects of living with anxiety and depression. Um, some of them are well, most of them are fiction. There's only four, so most of them are non-fiction. In fact, sorry, and one of them is fictional, and another is sort of an art-oriented book. But starting off, this was the first book I read, and it's called Mindfulness. It's an 8 weeks information book by Michael Chaskalson, and it's a very, very good introduction to teaching yourself about how to um, nurture and how to create a healthy mindset and thought patterns by using this technique called mindfulness. Now, if you're not aware, mindfulness is the idea that throughout modern life we have such busy, hectic, instantaneous lives and things going on in our lives that it's very difficult for our brains to remain uh, calm and functioning efficiently and cohesively. So often, I mean, every single person in the world, bar the lucky few, are going to experience some sort of mental health um, issues such as stress, depression, anxiety, um, agoraphobia, obsessive compulsive disorder, etc. Um, and mindfulness is ways to be self-taught in how to deal with them and best combat them. And mindfulness does that through taking the time to really slow down your thought process and to make it far more internalized as opposed to being focused on the next uh, job to do at work, the next exam at school, the next episode of the TV series, and it makes it very sort of yeah in intrinsic and dealing about your own thoughts and your own feelings and everything. So this one's really interesting because it combines, I guess, almost spiritual elements of Buddhist thought and meditation with uh, more sort of scientific, clinical approaches to mental health issues. And because it's an 8 week read, it's a very slow burner and something that is productive, but if you stick by it, can be very helpful. Um, it offers activities for you to do, so it's an interactive book, which is great because I think the best way to do something is to be interactive and not just to sit and listen and just let something fly over your head. Um, the first activity in this book, for example, is holding a single grape or raisin in your hand and spending a certain amount of time, you know, perceiving it with each sense. So looking at it, smelling it, touching it, hearing it, um, doing all these different things, and actually working very hard to bring your mind and your concentration and your thoughts entirely to this one small object, and process of actually eating. Um, and so it's a way to really train your brain to cope with life's stresses. So yeah, very interactive, uh, very informative, and I would recommend it if you're unaware of anxiety or depression, or just interested in mindfulness, and where if you have a healthy lifestyle in terms of physical health, like you exercise lots, it's often very good to try out ways to healthily exercise your brain. So yeah, mindfulness, Michael Chaskalson. The second book is very, very similar. It's called Mindfulness for Unraveling Anxiety. It's written by Richard Gilpin, and the subheading is Finding Calm and Clarity in Uncertain Times. So again, very, very similar to Mindfulness, the 8 Weeks book. It's perhaps less formal. The first book talks more about medical advice and approaches to it, and the spiritual approach. This does as well, but it touches more upon just the author's accounts of experiencing anxiety and how he was able to find his own thought processes or spirituality, and utilize mindfulness for overcoming anxiety. I mean, it's a really nice looking book, bound really nicely. It's short as well, which I think is good. You don't want some sort of mammoth odyssey to read through. You want something compact that is still going to get you thinking and contemplating about your mental health, but something that can offer you short and concise advice. Yeah, and it talks about all different things: emotions, behaviors, finding refuge, catching your breath. So it's got the physical, the thought, and the behavioral all linked together. And yeah, Richard Gilpin he's a counselor and cognitive behavioral coach. So he knows what he's talking about. And this is probably an easier read than the first book. But again, I highly recommend if you want some information on anxiety or some advice on how to deal with it, in book form. So, Mindfulness for Unraveling Anxiety by Richard Gilpin. Moving away from sort of the dry non-fiction medical advice, I've got a book called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran. And it's sort of poetry prose. And Khalil Gibran is a poet and a philosopher. He's also an artist. He's made illustrations for this book, which are fantastic. For example, you can't really see, but I would open it up on the Nudie People page. But it's poetry prose, beautifully written, and it is all about. It's there are aspects of theology, religion, spirituality, community advice, love, hate, light, darkness, sadness, happiness, and it is basically the premise of the book is there is a person who is leaving this land that he has blessed for a certain time, and just before he leaves, the people of the community are asking him or her advice on certain issues, certain very profound issues, such as what would you advise us on issues of love? What would you advise us on issues of education? And it's absolutely beautifully written and very profound. And if you wanted something to spark your imagination before you do something like mindfulness or meditation or you go to sleep, I would highly recommend reading something like this, because it's not only, as I say, it's fantastically written, it's very poetic, but it offers you optimism and hopeful um, hopeful readings of very day-to-day phenomena, as I said, such as, um, relationships, family, love, education, community, and it's quite, yeah, as I say, it's quite not religious because it's not tied to any one religion, but spiritual. And even if you read it for enjoyment and you didn't look at it for something that could help you do some mindfulness or whatever, I would highly, highly recommend it. So, The Prophet, Khalil Gibran, it's short as well, so you can dip in and out and you can read it in one sitting or over many sittings. So, um, the last book then is, in the last video I spoke about trying out new things, and something that was very new to me was watching. I love films, and I'm a bit of an avid collector of films, but I'd never really thought about taking animated films very seriously. I mean, I've throughout my life I've watched Disney and Pixar, but I'd never really watched any other animated films. I mean, you've got some absolutely fantastic animated films like Persepolis, all of the Studio Ghibli films. Ghibli. I never really know how to pronounce it, so if I'm pronouncing it wrong, I'm very sorry, but I'll call it Studio Ghibli. And yeah, in the last video, I spoke about taking up new little skill sets, and drawing was something that I found to do a little bit of practicing at and enjoyed. And the fourth book is The Art of Princess Mononoke, which is a very thick, hardback, large book, which does what it says on the tin, and it's all about the conceptual artwork of the film Princess Mononoke, which is a film by Studio Ghibli, and is my favourite of the ones I've seen so far. I won't go into the film or anything. I might talk about my favourite films in a later vlog, but the Art of Princess Mononoke really captured my imagination at a time where I was essentially just a grey blob lying on the sofa. The stories, the colours, the artwork, the illustrations, the drawing, the animation were out of this world, and I thought I would really love to try out my hand at drawing, and I did so, and I loved the film Princess Mononoke, so I bought the book, and I was amazed at how much pleasure it gave me at a time where there wasn't much to be found. So that unlike the sort of more informative scientific books, or the poetry that goes along with mindfulness or meditation, this was something that gave me a tangible outlet where I could study the illustrations and look at how they formed the characters and have a go at um, my own practices. So those are the four books. Obviously, books are such a wonderful tool that I cannot encourage you enough to pick up and read, even if you don't feel like it. I know it's the hardest thing to do if you don't feel like doing anything, but at least with a book, you're not staring into a screen. You are stimulating your mind. You're creating images and thoughts in your head that aren't attached to your anxiety, and you are transporting yourself. So yeah, those are the four books. If you have any books that have really helped you guys, or that you are interested in or love or would encourage or recommend, contact me. Like, send me a tweet, or comment on the YouTube section. I'm not very good at connecting all of my different um, social uh, avenues, but yeah, feel free, recommend and suggest some more books for me and others. But keep it interactive, and once again, I thank you very, very much for your time, and yeah, see you next time. Thank you. Bye.